whole phrase that, oh, Georgia has to play Clemson. No, Clemson has to play Georgia this year.
Welcome to My Gotta Podcast. I'm Jim Wood. In this episode, John Powell and I are joined by Logan Booker of 960 The Ref in the Second String Podcast. We had a blast discussing SEC Media Days, as well as the 2021 season with Logan. Be sure to follow Logan on Twitter at Logan M. Booker. And as always, we'll ask that you follow us on social media at My Gotta Podcast. And if you leave our podcast a review, you just might hear it on an upcoming episode. We were also joined by another special guest in this episode. Well, until they had to go to bed. Let's start this off with their introduction.
We have a celebrity amongst us, Jim.
We do. We do have a celebrity, and you've heard him on the Second String Podcast. And of course, we're talking about Carter Powell.
All right. You've heard him do an intro before.
That's right. The most famous podcaster on My God Podcast this episode. Carter, how's it going, buddy?
It's good.
It's good?
How about you?
Okay. I'm doing great. I'm glad you asked that. And obviously, we also have Logan Booker with us.
I was going to say, I'm the third mic on the Second String Podcast. As Carter reminded us earlier, there's Walker, there's Kareen, and then there's me bringing up the rear, man. So good call, Carter.
So Carter, I know, you had your intro to podcasting when you did like a cold open, for Second String. How was that experience for you?
Scary.
You killed it though, man. You absolutely knocked it out of the park. My question to you is, did you have everything written down, or is that just memorized in your head?
I had your intro playing, but that's all.
Have you watched, say, like The Sandlot or another movie and then recognized one of the sound bites and been like, hey, I know exactly
what I heard. I watched The Sandlot, but...
Okay. Awesome. I guess in a few years you can introduce him to Cool Hand Luke and introduce him to more stuff.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think some of them are a little out of your age bracket right now. I think
probably so.
I don't know if you've seen The Goonies. Have you seen The Goonies, Carter? I don't think he's seen The Goonies. That was another one.
He's getting there.
There's stuff in The Goonies that you don't remember. I had that experience when I watched it with my kids.
Like the bad words that are pretty bad for 2021.
Right. It's just like the opening sequence. I was like, I don't remember this part. So Carter, what was more nerve-wracking, doing the opening for the Second String or being on My God Podcast?
Second String.
I hear you, man. Yeah.
That was a lot of pressure because he had to recite it from memory.
That's true.
That was the big thing because this is just a conversation. We're just a bunch of dudes just chatting it up.
We have actually, Carter. We have used you as an example in some of our corporate meetings and kind of touch bases. We've been told, Walker and I, to shorten the intro. It's like, you guys have got to shorten the intro. It's way too long. And I'm like, listen, you don't get it. We have fans that have sent us their renditions of it. We're never changing it. So I think we've had somebody else do it a couple years back as well. So I think because you've done that, Carter, you've saved that intro not knowing it. How cool is that?
Pretty cool.
You've got your fingerprint.
If they were to shorten that, I would have had to have a talk with them.
That's what I'm talking about, Carter. That is exactly what I'm talking about. He's going to make it, John. He's going to make it.
I think he does okay. He doesn't lack for confidence at all.
Fantastic.
Grady, here he comes. Watch out. Watch out, Grady.
That's
College.
True. Yeah, now you've got a referral for the Grady College Journalism.
I know the dean. We can give him a letter. No worries, man.
Speaking of college journalism, you just recently had a trip.
Yeah, we are. Where are we now? We were talking before we came on air, 45 days until kickoff, the time of recording. Jim, I was telling them before you came in here that this weekend we're going to hit 1,000 hours until kickoff. So,
nice.
So let that kind of just like chip away real quick. I think that's like Saturday or Sunday. But yeah, that means we're at SEC Media Days, which we all have circled on the calendar. And I was able to get out there for a short trip. Went out there Monday afternoon and came back after the Georgia festivities on Tuesday. But it was just good to be back, man. Like it's definitely a watered down version of the SEC Media Days this year. And I'll be honest, I wasn't aware they were going to do so many COVID protocols until after we sort of got all the notes from the SEC. Once it was coming up, they're like, and oh, by the way, we're not going to have breakaway interviews. We're not going to have all the chaos in the lobby that normally happens. You're basically going to sit in your seat, let the players and the coaches come to the podium. They'll say a few words, you'll ask some questions, and they'll leave. So as far as a normal SEC media days, it was very small. It kind of lacked sort of the ability and some things. One of the reasons I love media days so much is that you're able to kind of get into smaller groups with a quarterback. I remember Aaron Murray there several years ago. Do you guys remember back in 2013 or maybe it was 2014, Jadeveon Clowney made a comment about quarterbacks being scared. And he specifically cited Aaron Murray as one of the quarterbacks. He could see the fear in his eyes. I was standing right next to Jadeveon Clowney when he said that with like 5 people. Okay, players are not going to make those kind of comments in a room talking to 400 people. They make those kind of comments when there's only 5 of us standing around kind of getting last-minute quotes and whatnot. So I think for that reason alone, outside, and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, as the show goes on, outside of the bombshell about Texas and Oklahoma today, what have we learned from media days? Really, really not much this year because there's not much happening. It's just players and coaches talking to a large room, and that's it. So it's a little bit different, but at the same time, I'm not trying to complain about it at all. It was phenomenal just to get out there. I had the realization when I was there that talking to JT Daniels, talking to Kirby Smart and Jordan Davis, that was the first time since March of 2020 that we've talked in person. Every single interview we've done as media and with the players and coaches has been through a computer screen. And I know that's what we're doing right now, and that's just one way to do things these days. But when you're trying to get interviews and stuff with players, it really is that in-person connection when you're going to get the information you want, kind of write a side story that not everybody's working on. So it was different in that regard. It really was. But like I said, it was just really good to get out there and feel normal, even if it was on a smaller scale. And I know you guys, just like me, cannot wait. What is it, September 11th, 52 days from today. Let's set up some tailgates, man. Let's start seeing our people again. 'Cause I miss it. I miss it a lot.
I heard you got tickets for the Georgia game.
Sweet.
The first Georgia game against Clemson.
So you're going to Charlotte then?
Awesome. No, he's not going. Dad's going.
Okay, I got you. Well, September 11th, the first home game. That'll be that UAB coming through. And we'll
know Georgia will win like 50-0.
Confidence.
Carter, I wish you were my radio show host. I love David Johnston to death. He really is like a mentor, but he's scared all the time, man. He always wants to act like we got to watch out for UAB. Like, no, we don't. We're beating those guys by 50 points. Let's have some fun talking about it. But no, I share that confidence, Carter. I think that's going to be a really nice get back to Sanford Stadium game for everybody.
It's basically like saying you're playing at Georgia State or Coastal Carolina.
Hey, ask Tennessee. Ask Tennessee how Georgia State went a couple of years ago. Am I
right? Seriously.
But good news. Hey, good news, Carter. Good news. We're not Tennessee right now. That's what we got going for us.
Yeah, amen. I think Carter. I don't know. I feel like I'm getting like edged out of my Got a Podcast. I think I'm going to lose my seat. John and Carter are local. They cohabitate. I'm all the way in North Carolina. I don't know. I'm not sure what's going on there. But yeah, I know. Like, I'll say Logan. Like, David Johnson is definitely. He's doing what we call Munsoning. So, but it looks like the Munsoning has not passed on to the next generation. Carter Powell is teaching us that right now. So I think that's a good thing. I'm trying to stop. I'm working on that myself.
I want to be confident, but I always I guess recently we go back, and David does this a lot, where all you have to look back to is 2019 South Carolina, a game that if Georgia and South Carolina played 100 times, I guarantee Georgia wins that thing 99 times. 99 victories, and probably most of them easy, but for some reason, every little thing that could go wrong went wrong that day. And I think for a lot of us, maybe not me as much, but for a lot of us, we will reference that day for every game for the next 10 years thinking, all right, don't get overconfident. We've seen this happen before. It can happen again. And we see it We see it all over college football. Like how much do we love the unforeseen upset? We love it.
Yeah.
As just the casual onlooking college fan, it is amazing until it's your team, and then it sucks. There's no worse feeling. But when it's any other team out there, that's why we love this sport so bad. So remember, it can happen anytime, anywhere, man. I guess there's my Munsoning of the show. I'll get it out of my system.
Yeah, we love Munson, but I definitely try to cut back on the Munsoning. I know I've heard a lot of people saying lately, like, just I don't know, like, sometimes you put that negative energy out in the world and it gets around, right? I mean, let's be positive, let's be confident. I've got no problem with that.
I hear you. That being said, Dogs 48, UAB like 12, some crooked number. That's probably what's going to happen. So
They'll have some garbage time. There'll probably be some garbage time.
UAV versus our defensive line. That's just going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, man. Yeah, well, we got a pretty big game before we get to UAB, though, man. I can't wait.
You can't go looking ahead. How you feeling about Clemson?
Clemson. I mean, I would rather play Ohio State than Clemson. Seeing what they did last year, I'm scared, but I'm also not. Because I know Georgia has the potential to beat Clemson, but Clemson also has the potential to beat us.
I think
just like it did with Alabama and us.
From the overall matchup with Georgia and Clemson, I'm trying to think, where is there a distinct advantage for either team? And I really can't come up with one, to be honest with you. If you want to look at Clemson's offensive line, I think is not as good as Georgia's, but the offensive lines don't go up against each other. And as you know, Georgia's defensive line, a lot of people are putting them top 2, top 3 in the nation when it comes to the rankings. And as we know, Clemson, by a lot of standards, getting the number 1 overall ranking. But I have a sneaky suspicion that Georgia's defensive line can get a pretty solid push on Clemson's offensive line. And if you can just disrupt, are you ready for this, Carter? DJ Uiagalelei. I practiced that for quite a bit, by the way. But DJ Uiagalelei, if we can get him disrupted and make him do some things that he's not comfortable doing. We remember he has not played a ton of college football. He went up to and had a pretty darn good game against Notre Dame in a losing effort up there in South Bend last year, but then he made up for it in the ACC championship game, and again a big way. I guess the garbage time he saw there when Trevor Lawrence was back in, but he's going to be raw too. It's a massive stage for Clemson, just like it is for Georgia. So that whole phrase that, Georgia has to play Clemson, Clemson has to play Georgia this year. And that's going to be a really, really tough task for them as well. So keep in mind that if you were to swap rosters, I kind of use this analogy from time to time. If you were to just to trade rosters, every Clemson player is a Georgia player, every Georgia player is a Clemson player, that would terrify me, having to go up against Jordan Davis and JT Daniels and this Arian Smith kid that not many people know about. And just all the weapons, the Eric Gilberts, the Darnell Washingtons. I would not be sleeping easy at all thinking about going up against that team. So that's what Clemson fans, I think, may catch them a little bit by surprise. They're used to winning right now. They're used to winning big. So I think if someone punches them in the mouth, like I think Georgia can early, you can get DJ Uiagalelei, do it again slow, off of his game, and maybe things will go Georgia's way early and often. So I'm so intrigued by this opening matchup. I cannot wait for kickoff for this thing, man. And everything I said, you could flip it and it could go the other way. I have no idea, but it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, about the QB matchup,
Yeah.
Georgia's got that, coming from your own words, that beautiful man, JT Daniels.
That beautiful, beautiful man. That's Walker saying, not mine, but I roll with it every time he says it. And he is a beautiful man. I'm not above admitting that. The guy looks good, man, especially with the football in his hand.
How did his suit look in person, Logan? You were there.
I've seen multiple Reservoir Dogs references. He could have stepped right into that movie. He could have stepped right in and been one of the robbers, man. He was ready for the role. No, he looks good, and I'm with you, Carter. He is a great quarterback. I do kind of back off a little bit, knowing that we've only seen him for 4 games. We've only seen him against. Let me think about this: Mississippi State, Missouri, South Carolina, and Cincinnati. And Cincinnati was a very good team. I do not want to right Cincinnati at all. But we have seen very little of JT. But that's where I think having a spring this year, which we didn't have last year, having a healthy JT, having Todd Monken be able to install that offense for a solid calendar year, that's really going to show what I think is going to be massive growth from JT when he takes the field September 4th. So, but DJ, that kid is also really good. And I guess you probably saw this, Carter. They were high school rivals out in California, so they know each other very, very well. Those two, so it's they know about each other more than we realize, and they're both very good quarterbacks. So I don't know. That to me, honestly, is one of those coin tosses as to who has the better quarterback.
It's interesting that we could potentially play like what is it? We got Clemson, Florida, Alabama. There's a lot of SEC teams breaking in new quarterbacks this year, which typically is not a good.
It's not a good theory like we did last year.
Amen, Carter.
I was going to say it all just bodes well into Georgia's schedule. It's the big talking point is that after Clemson, there should not be a loss. I say this as sort of a bit of a homer, obviously, but there shouldn't be one of those games in the regular season that you circle and strike fear into your heart. I mean, Florida is going to be in a bit of a recovery mode too. I am not sold on Emory Jones like a lot of non-Georgia guys are. They sort of want to believe that Dan Mullen's going to be that whisperer and bring out the next Dak Prescott, and I just don't see it. Every little bit we've seen of Emory Jones trying to throw a ball is not pretty. And he's got some wheels he can move around, but I trust Georgia's front seven to contain him if they bring a running attack to Jacksonville.
Yeah, for sure. And I haven't looked in Vegas, but I mean, and like spoiler alert, I know John will talk about this when we do like our full season preview, but I mean like over under for Georgia win total is what regular season, is, I mean, like you got to set it at 11.5 or 10.5, right? I mean,
yeah,
right there. I think everyone's kind of thinking the same thing. Not saying that's what will happen, but you would look when you look at it on paper, you wouldn't expect more than one loss.
Yeah, for sure. I think the bookies had them at 10.5.
Wow.
Okay.
So yeah, and even if I mean it's a conversation we have to have for the next 45 days, but even if Georgia cannot get by Clemson, say they lose that close game, certainly there's a bit of a margin of error that will be erased. And you don't want to go into the SEC championship game. Granted, you get there with multiple losses. You want to have that error, that margin for error when you're there. You beat Clemson. I think we're talking about the number one team in the nation. There will be no bigger win for any team. And that's whoever wins Georgia Clemson, whether it's Clemson or Georgia, that will be the biggest win of Labor Day weekend. They will be the number one team in the nation week 2. And whoever grabs that role, and look, as we all know, there's not much of a challenge for Clemson after Georgia, and there's not as much of a challenge as normal for Georgia after Clemson. So whoever wins that game, I could very, very easily see them potentially running the regular season. All of a sudden, we find ourselves the first Saturday in December talking about a team that's been number one since Labor Day weekend. If they were to lose, and look, we're Georgia fans, we don't like seeing Alabama across the field. If you were to lose that game, have you done enough to do what Alabama has done and sneak into a playoff without winning your conference? I don't know. It's certainly one to think about.
Yeah, that's a rule that's been thus far has been reserved for Alabama, Ohio State, and Notre Dame. Right, they're the only 3 to do it. And Notre Dame, I guess I count that as last year, right? Because they were full participants in the ACC last year. They're the only one to lose in a championship game, though, and make it. Alabama did the backdoor, with not even winning their division, which different subject.
Yeah,
it still irks me.
You can stop right there. There's no further comment needed on that. Yeah,
too soon.
But yeah, it's huge. September 4th. I know a lot of conversation I've seen is, it doesn't matter who wins that game. It's a non-conference loss. It very much matters. I think it certainly is enough to start building that resume, building the rapport. As we know, whether it's the Heisman Trophy or the college football playoff participants, these days it really takes having that shine, that glitter that the media likes, that the nation, that ESPN loves to show the highlights of. The ones that fill all that airspace tend to get the nod when the playoff committee kind of sit together. So when we get to 12 games, that's a whole nother 4-hour podcast we could talk about. But I think when we get to that level, you don't have to worry as much about having all that love from the media going forward. But I think this year, I think a big step Georgia can take that Georgia has not been the benefactor of, and I think it drives a lot of us crazy for years now, is even good Georgia teams don't seem to get that weekly love from all the big talking heads. There's always just pundits out there. Beat Clemson, you're setting yourself up for 3 solid months of a whole lot of positive attention, and that will play a factor when the playoff committee sits down together. So beat Clemson, you really are in a driver's seat the next couple months.
Particularly if we're putting up the points that they're all the guys are kind of predicting that we're going to be breaking some scoring records.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking when you were saying that, Logan, about like the shine on the team and like coming from the media, et cetera. I mean, there have been years past when I felt like Georgia was good, but we weren't necessarily like sexy. Like this team could be sexy, right? I mean, you've got like on the defensive side, I mean, Jordan Davis, obviously sexy, right? I mean, but the pass rushers, the transfer DBs, we've got to solidify, the secondary along with the guys who are already here. But then that offense, I mean, tailback yet again, and then with JT Daniels, our plethora of tight ends, and even without Pickens, right? The receiving core with our favorite Kyrus Jackson, but then add in, we've already mentioned with Arian Smith, right? We got A.D. Mitchell, and then add in. Okay, question. So since you just schooled us on Uwe Ungalale?
Uwe Ungalale.
Okay.
There you go.
Do you know, is it Eric Gilbert or Arik Gilbert? I feel like I don't know.
I think it's just straight up Eric, just as if it were spelled ERIC. I don't think there's
that's what I thought.
Anything. Yeah. It's just I know a lot of people say Eric, like emphasize the Eric, but it's my understanding that just pretend it's spelled ERIC and just go with that. And I could be wrong, but please, Carter, don't prove me wrong if you can. But
we're hanging on. I'm hanging on tight, waiting for GeorgiaDogs.com to get updated with Scott Howard's pronunciation of.
I was just about to look. Have they not done that
players
with him
who
yet?
spell their names in interesting ways?
Okay. Which interesting.
They had not yet 2 days ago. 2 days ago, okay. They hadn't. Last time I checked.
I'm looking at it right now, and there is not that little ear logo next to Eric Gilbert yet. There is one next to Robert Beal, in case you were curious how to say Robert Beal. So I can't figure that one out. We like to play that soundbite on our morning show from time to time just to poke fun at our buddy Scott Howard. But Robert Beal. So, okay, glad we could clear that one.
That's awesome.
A lot of questions, but. Anyway, no, I think those weapons are there.
I'm waiting for A.D. Mitchell to show up as well, because I don't know if it's A.D. or it sounds like now he's going by A.D., but it's like I think it's Adonai, but I'm not sure. So I'm hoping Scott does that one as well. I don't know. These are the things that I care about like as we approach the season. When do we get Scott Howard's pronunciation guide?
Scott, if you're listening, get on it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Well, Scott gets a dog bone for this episode.
Mm-hmm. Well, like you said a second ago, we were talking about winning with style goes a long, long way. Was it 2019, I think, was the year where Georgia had a really good year. I mean, what was the overall record? 11-1 regular season. But I think we bickered and fought amongst ourselves every single week. Even the Notre Dame game, the 23-17 victory, I felt got met with so much like, well, we didn't look good doing it. It's like, dude, it's a win over Notre Dame between the hedges. Let's all exhale. But there have been years recently, 2018 also, where Georgia has really good 11-1 teams. But I'm not sure any Georgia fan out there would admit they had fun watching it. It's just it was a very frustrating 11-1. And I think for those reasons that a lot of the national media, the national pollsters, were also bored by watching Georgia. It was that ground and pound, and Kirby Smart has changed his philosophy. He's made that known recently. And he used to say, well, it's not pretty, it's not sexy, you're bored by it, but we're running the damn ball. Well, now I think he's really kind of going off of his protege, or his predecessor in Nick Saban. And yeah, exactly. Make new hats that say pass the damn ball. Because I think we're getting there. I really do. But and that does not mean that Zamir White, James Cook, Kendall Milton, Kenny McIntosh will not get their very fair share of touches. I just think it's become a brand new game that if you're not adapting, you're going to get left behind. And I think Kirby's actually realizing that. So I do think we're going to see a different version of Georgia, and I think we're going to have some fun this year.
Yeah, I think the big thing was the last 2 seasons has been, we had Coley, which was just an abject failure, and then we had Monken came in and didn't really get a full off season, a full spring to really kind of get going. Not to mention like even just like a normal like year to get his offense kind of up and running. But now they've got everything. It's been fairly normal-ish. At Butts-Mehre, but the thing that I looked at is that they finally have all the tools around them. They got all the returning receivers. We've got a returning quarterback. We've got an offensive coordinator that knows what he's doing. And we talked about that. We've talked about that a lot. The plays were all there last year. We just didn't have anybody to execute it.
And I love Stetson Bennett. He's a good dog. What he did to mimic Baker Mayfield back in 2017 and get that team ready for that Rose Bowl was awesome. Sorry about that. My wife is trying to chime in here. But it's what he's done is fantastic. But like you said, John, just now, there were a lot of missed plays. You go back and watch that Alabama game. There were chances to separate yourself from Alabama and make them have to make the comeback, and certainly some opportunities. So I think JT Daniels late in the season was starting to hit those guys. And that's one thing that we've talked about a lot on my podcast and show is having that real offseason, not the COVID offseason, which threw everybody for a loop. And the new everything. Yeah, you hit on half of those missed opportunities, and you're talking about a completely different team. You throw a healthy JT Daniels into the cocktail party with a lot of those misses. I'm thoroughly convinced that Georgia wins that game. That's a great point. Is that those missed opportunities, just turn those into touches and see what happens.
Well, even as it was in the Florida game, right? If we don't drop a pick six, it's a 7-point game in the fourth quarter.
Absolutely.
I mean, that whole game was crazy. But yeah, we were looking at it last year, like all the guys who are wide open underneath, all year that we weren't throwing to, we were throwing it deep. The funny thing is, we kept saying like, oh, you're missing the read, and this guy's wide open. I think by the end of the season, we realized, well, the guys that were deep were open too.
Yeah.
It's just that JT could get it there, right?
Exactly. And it's things like the trip to California when JT and all those receivers went and spent, a week or so out in Cali. Those things are important. Those things are really, really important to have a chemistry both on and off the field with your offensive players. And when you're the quarterback, and look, JT has said all the right things every single time he's been in front of the media, whether it was post-game last year or just this past week at media days, he really seems to talk as if he is friends with the guys on this team. That is very, very important in here. So don't minimize that at all as we think about what this offense can look like. These guys have been around each other a lot now in a much more normal setting. So I think that definitely translates into hitting open receivers on fall Saturdays.
Yeah,
I think I saw a couple of commentary points on JT from media days. I can't remember her name. There was a reporter that posted out there. I saw it late last night that said that that JT Daniels has it. He has the it for it to be a QB1 from her interactions with him at media days, that definitely sounds that way because when he's talking about name, image, likeness, I can't remember who it was, but I saw that they had mentioned to him that he needed to lock down some restaurants so that he could take his offensive line and stuff out. And he was like, yeah, I've already done that.
Good. What was it years ago? Aaron Murray he used to take the offensive line to Ben and Jerry's any game they didn't get sacked. And you got to take care of the big uglies, man. Got to take care of them. And that offensive line, what's that, Carter?
That must have been fun.
I know. That's one of my favorite places downtown, man. But no, as far as the offensive line goes, and I know you guys talk about it a lot too, there are some names that I'm looking to make that next step. I want to see Broderick Jones make that sophomore stride. I want to see who else, some of the younger guys. I want to see Tate Ratledge make that move, show us why he was such a coveted recruit. I'm not going to put a bold prediction. I don't like talking about true freshmen. Not everybody can be Andrew Thomas and step in as a true freshman, but I'm very curious about Amarius Mims. For everything I've heard about
Yeah.
Amarius Mims so far, I think he might see some meaningful playing time early on. And as we talked about the schedule, it might be a very friendly schedule in getting some of these guys some really good reps, whether it be early game, mid game, or late game. Because when you do get to the big, grandest of stage, you want all your guys clicking on all cylinders in case there's an injury that happens, out there. You want those guys to be able to step in. But I know a lot of names out there, a lot of star power when it comes to recruiting. But those are a few names that I'm really looking to make that next step this year. And I think we'll be in decent shape once we get things rolling.
Yeah, and like the opponents, I mean the schedule, like we didn't have the opportunity last year, right? With the all SEC schedule, you didn't have those cupcake games. You can get those guys playing time, and I know like that's the double edged sword of that, right? Like as a fan, that's like, oh well, we got to play, insert directional school, whatever. But like those are the times where you get those young guys in the game and get them that experience to get them ready and with a real live action to see what they can do. So that's another thing. I'll have that back this year.
Yeah. We did have Tennessee early last year, so we appreciate them. Teaching our defensive line how to really play together. But I poke fun of them. I look back at that game last year, Tennessee. I've got some really good friends of mine, and I mean they are good friends. They do Knoxville radio, just like we do. They're Tennessee grads. They love the Vols. They were so high on life coming down to Sanford State. They thought they were going to beat the Dogs by 20 points, man. They were coming in large, and the way that thing played out made me very happy. Monty Rice with the the strip, sack, scoop, score. I'm missing one. I feel there's the 4 S's or whatever, but that was a great moment. But yeah, I know UAB may be a little bit better than your average directional $1 million paycheck game, but like we talked about earlier, it is going to be a warm-up game. Don't psych yourself out thinking that it's not, and you'll hopefully get some of those young guys we just mentioned, some of those reps, and when you do settle into the SEC schedule, man, they could really make those next strides. So I've been able to be around kind of in passing some of these guys we're talking about. They're all the size of mountains. I mean, Amarius Mims, I didn't know they made kids that large at the age of 17 and 18 years old. It's crazy. I think a good comparison of Amarius Mims, when Isaiah Wilson came into Georgia, a true freshman from Brooklyn. I mean, you looked at that kid and you were like, oh my God, this is insane. And that's the feeling about Amarius Mims when you see him. And the reports you're getting from the way he's working out really sounds pretty positive. But I want to see Tate Ratledge. I want to see Broderick Jones get some of that playing time as well to kind of add the depth when needed, because you don't want to leave those guys out there every single snap if you don't have to.
Yeah, I don't know. That's an area that I'm really hoping we can take a big step forward this year, right? Because I mean, late in the season, and then I mean, frankly, the line didn't have a good game in the bowl game, right? After the attrition for the draft, which is fine. But I think we saw pretty much that same 5 as started on, I forget, the red team, I think, or whatever at G-Day. So I'm definitely curious to see what movement is made as far as what we saw at the end of last year in the bowl game. What changes are there? Who's rotating around? And for sure, the young guys. I don't know. It'll be really interesting to see Clemson. I guess. I mean, I also too. Like I started to say, I guess we'll know ahead of time. But with Kirby, I don't know that we will. Like we may find out who the starting 5 is when they run out there on the field. I don't know, because I know there's not as much media time. Do you know this year? Like I know last year there was like no media viewing during practice because of COVID. I don't know what that's going to be like this year. Not that they can see much in the first period.
I don't know about practice yet. They very well may limit that in terms of just watching practice. I know they're working very hard to get us those Monday media days to go pepper them with questions and whatnot. But like you said, I would much rather go watch a practice than talk to them post-practice. But as far as right now, we don't have those answers yet. We're just kind of crossing our fingers that we will get to go out there. But I'll tell you this, and I'm not trying to it's not irrelevant, but for the last several years when Kirby's been there, it is so strategic and planned out that when we go see the 12 minutes we get of practice, we're not seeing anything. It is literally them doing footwork drills and just basic stretches. I have yet to see, since Kirby's been here, see any sort of offensive linemen and defensive linemen clap pads at the same time. I've not seen that a single time in practice. We just don't get that kind of access anymore. But again, you can still learn a lot from going to practice and watching the little things for sure. But I would be surprised if this year, especially coming out of SEC media days, that they did limit us so much. My prediction right now is I'm not sure we're going to get practice access. We'll get more just media access, but hopefully we're a year away from getting back on the practice field. We'll see soon.
I will say it was very different when I was in school. Although and also like I regret not like why didn't I like work for the Red and Black or something? I don't know. That was dumb. Like bad on me. But like I remember the practices that I got to go through just through like my dad being friends with people or whatever. Like I would get to go to like the whole thing, and like I mean, when you're there, I mean, you definitely. I know why they don't want you to be there because like I knew all the checks. Like I knew all the audibles because like they had this is back with like David Green. And like I knew all of his hand signals, and so it was pretty cool though when you're watching the game because he would do something and you knew exactly what it was going to do.
That's cool. I guess the Richt days we used to get a little bit more access. One of my favorite days of the year for a few years there was the first day of spring practice, where Mark Richt would literally tell the media, "Come on out, you get the whole hour and a half to watch us do everything," and we could just mosey around the sidelines. And again, you're not going to learn the playbook by doing that, but you certainly could kind of get a feel for who's getting reps where, who looks good under certain situations. But I'm not sure any media member outside of some really deep pocket Hartman Fund donors, the McGill Society, and hey, good for them. They got the pockets. I say let them in whatever they want, but they will find out more than the media for sure. There's a reason, without giving a whole bunch away, there's a reason that some of the best sources out there happen to be making payments to the McGill Society every year because they see a lot more than we do as media for sure. So. And that's just where we are.
Have buildings named after them.
Exactly. If you got a quick second, when Mark Richt used to have us access, one day, Carter, you'll like this one. He chewed me out. Mark Richt just laid into me one day, man. We think of Mark Richt as this nice, soft-spoken sort of father figure, very religious man. When he's on the practice field, it's not that way, man. I learned the hard way because we have very specific parameters. Are we used to with him of when you can take photographs. And you literally were told when you go out there, you can take photographs for session 1 and 2, not 3. And there's the clock on the wall. It's like 3 minutes per session. So you know, and you've been told that when the buzzer goes off after session 2, no photos. And when we were out there, it was the end of like session 2, whatever you want to call it. And I think it was Chris Conley was like catching a pass down the sideline. And I had my camera out and I'm doing one of those pan shots, like pop, 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 pop. And the buzzer went off during the play, okay? So, like, the play's finishing, and I just happened to take a few extra photos when he was there. Well, my bad luck, I was right next to Mark Richt, and he decided to make an example out of me that day. I mean, he chewed into me like it was – like I was one of his players on his naughty list. It was so embarrassing, man. And, I mean, I was like my first year covering media. I was for sure like, oh, my God, I just got banned from covering Georgia sports. In my mind, that's what was going on, but let's just say Mark Richt used some non-Christian words when telling me that I was breaking the rules, and I dropped my camera down to the strap and abruptly left the field, and I didn't know what to do. I'm this young, green reporter, so I actually like pulled up Mark Richt's email and I shot him a very quick apologetic email, like, listen, I'm very sorry. Basically, without pleading for my access, I was basically saying, please don't ban me from covering Georgia sports. I want to make a career out of this. And later on that day, I got an email back that just said no harm, no foul. And he treated me with nothing but the utmost respect ever since that day. But I promise you, every time that buzzer went off to say no more pictures, I would physically dangle that camera in the strap and make sure everybody saw I am not taking photos right now. But I like that for the rest of my days, I can tell the story of Mark Richt just chewing me out, man, because not many people have had that experience outside of his players. So I miss those days of practice. Those were fun, man.
What was the famous like phrase for Urban Meyer when the reporters got on his bad side, like they had to sit like in seat something or other, like he was known for that kind of thing.
I haven't heard that.
He was known for that kind of thing.
That'd be Coach Urban Myers, right, Carter?
Coach Urban Myers.
What are
The
you
good
looking
old
for,
days,
Carter?
man.
What are you looking to see when the Dogs take the field in September?
Well, the offense, I want to see the fair share of passing, running, the fair share of switching up the lineups, like wide receivers,
Mhm.
running backs, because we got a couple of those. And I just think if we do that, we would have a good chance of going undefeated this season.
And like we've talked about right here, Carter, is that we expect to see a lot more passing, more of an air attack than maybe years past with Georgia. But one thing I always bring up when we think about, is Georgia going to be this pass happy, never run the ball team? And we always say a phrase that doesn't make much sense when we say that. We say, like Alabama. Don't forget that Najee Harris was a thing last year. And that guy scored, how many touchdowns did he score? 26, I think, touchdowns last year as a running back for a team that was pass happy. So if you base that model,
Yeah.
I don't know who it's going to be that's going to take over in the running back room. I think you got 4 very viable options, but there will be plenty of runs to divvy out. There is such thing as a balanced attack and still have much more of an aerial assault. So when a lot of people have the conversation, well, what about the running backs? All I say is, what about Najee Harris? He seemed to do just fine in that thing. I'm not saying any of our guys are Najee. That guy was special, man. But
Yeah.
Georgia can certainly find a way to run the ball with the passing game for sure.
Who are the reporters? Who are the reporters most jazzed about? Like, and obviously you were around a lot of the sports writers and those kinds of guys. Even probably, I don't know if you interacted with Buck or any of the other Georgia guys, but who are they jazzed about right now based on what they're hearing?
You talking about
Obviously
in the
Buck's like a
running game
former.
or
Yeah, like the running
specifically?
backs. Like
Yeah,
who are they hearing?
I think the biggest thing we're looking forward to seeing, and all of us, is really the step from freshman to sophomore year of Kendall Milton.
Yeah.
He looks like that dude, man. He really does. And I hate to put this label on anybody; it's just not fair. But I'm telling you, his body type, the way he runs, it looks like a 2012 Todd Gurley to me. I'm not. I don't want to put those expectations on him at all the next few years. But think back to a sort of skinnier version of Todd Gurley as a freshman. That's what I was watching in Kendall Milton last year. But that being said, Zamir White, the healthier he gets, and I think you saw a very good product of Zamir White in the Peach Bowl in Atlanta to wrap things up. He looked strong, and I think James Cook will be a
Yeah.
little bit more of that Alvin Kamara type role. I don't see him as a between the tackles, hand the ball off in a running situation type role. But I think the good thing here is that those expectations we have with Kendall Milton making that next step, and you can really balance that out with a Zamir White and turn them into that sort of two-headed monster. And all this is no disrespect to Kenny McIntosh either. That guy's also
Yeah.
pretty darn good. So you've got options there, but that's a long way of answering your question. That I think the progress of Kendall Milton is going to be a big buzz as the season kicks off, and I think you're going to see some pretty cool stuff from him.
So the Todd Gurley comparison is the one that I
Yeah.
made because I know I've heard a lot of people say Chubb, but I don't think he looks like Chubb. A lot of it is just like, I don't know. To me, I don't know. I like when you look at you want the perfect back. It's like the combination. You want like the vision, the speed, the power, the balance, and that I don't know. The vision for Gurley was one of the big things for me, right? And then the balance as well. And I think like Sony had that as well, right? Like the balance, think of all the times like Sony getting to the pylon. But at any rate, yeah, man, that's what I saw a lot out of Milton last year. And I love McIntosh.
Yeah.
And we forget both of those guys, right? We forget that they were hurt, for a decent amount of the season last year. So I don't know. Love to see what they're going to do back healthy. I mean, in the kickoff return game as well, right? I mean, McIntosh was incredible returning kicks when he was healthy.
Yeah.
So
I mean, think you have not had JT Daniels and Kendall Milton in the game together yet. Because am I saying this right? Kendall did not play in the bowl game, did he?
He
hurt his
played,
knee.
but he came back for the bowl game, but didn't play significant time.
Okay, yeah, because he hurt his knee or hyperextended it against Florida. It was late in that game against Florida, so we have not even seen JT Daniels and Kendall Milton together on the field in a substantial role yet. So it's exciting to think about. It really is. And back to what we were saying a second ago, that whole We want to see the ball thrown. We want to see the passing attack. Don't forget that all these successful teams that were running the ball, think of Clyde Edwards-Helaire with LSU. He was a big part of that Joe Burrow offense. He's a big reason that LSU team was able to go undefeated and win a national championship. So Georgia will certainly have the complementary run game to go with what can be a pretty deadly passing attack. So I know sounds like we're drinking the Kool-Aid big time, but I think of all the years, and I mean this, and I've had this conversation with a lot of people, of all the years that I've been around the team covering it and just growing up a fan, I honestly think there's something that feels different right now about this upcoming team that just I can't find a glaring weakness anywhere. And it's almost scary to think about because I don't want to set myself up for the higher you are, the farther you fall type crash. But it's just I got a feeling like so many other people, man, that this could be a very, very fun fall once we kick things off. And I'll say you this, even if things don't go great against Clemson, I really think you can rebound from that and have a very, very fun special season afterwards. So we'll see.
Because after Clemson, you have that break against UAB, all those Division III teams.
Yep. What is the? I'm trying to think the schedule. So you've got UAB, then you got South Carolina, then you got a Division III team in Vanderbilt, and you should beat up on them pretty good.
If they'll play us.
I don't know if y'all have heard my theory on this.
We're going scared.
Yeah. If you've heard my dream in life right now is that, and look, I'm very upset at Vanderbilt. I never thought that I would find a place in my life where I have this like disdain for Vanderbilt. Okay. But I do right now. I'm with a lot of Georgia fans that they ticked me off last year by robbing us of senior day. But what I want to happen, I want Kirby Smart to make no bones about it. I want him to be public about it. I want him to go into that Monday press conference, pull his phone out and say, well, looks like it's going to be 82 degrees in Nashville, and we're going to score 82 points. Whatever the temperature is in Nashville, September 25th, I want Kirby to hit that number on the dot. If there's a cold front and it's only 55 degrees, okay, we'll score 55 points. Hopefully there's a heat wave and it's 93 degrees, and let's score 93 points, man. So I wish in a world that only exists in my head, Kirby Smart would advertise what he's going to do and go out there and do it. Because I think you can score at will against Vanderbilt this year.
You were wondering what the biggest score to offense is, and that's like 48-0.
Yes.
No, what he's saying, you want to have it be like the Alabama Prez game where we won 108-0.
Exactly. No,
I think the saddest Mike got a podcast was when Vanderbilt was canceled for the second time. We recorded an episode like right after they announced it, and we were just like, ugh. And we're like, I hate Vanderbilt.
It's a mess. I enjoy my trips to Nashville. I'm sure you guys have been up there before. It's a great place to go watch a Georgia football game. I love that trip. And it's one that you're comfortable because you should expect to win, but I'm not sure I've ever been to Nashville with this like burning fire hatred in my heart for that team. And I do right now.
Yeah.
It's just weird. And let's do something, even if Kirby just scores like one extra touchdown in garbage time, just to kind of let you know that we don't appreciate last year. I would rather that happen than nothing, and then we can just get back to letting Vanderbilt be Vanderbilt. But I do think a response is warranted and expected for what he did to those seniors last year. It's a big deal. It really is. Kirby's not going to go score 100 points, but a long pass late in the fourth quarter, I think that's 100% warranted right now.
Carter's got to go to bed.
Uh-oh.
That's all right, Carter.
Me too, Carter. It's getting late for me too, buddy. Hey, did you the second string dropped today? Did you see that? We were a day early.
Oh.
Yes.
I'll probably go upstairs and listen to it. If it's
Spotify. I should
Spotify.
have told you that before bed. But yeah, we had to record a day early, so it's ready when you are, man.
Make sure next time you make one, shout me out.
I'll do it, man. I will now. I just hung out with you. I have to.
Any parting words, Master Chief.
Good luck with this guy.
I hear that, man. I hear that. See you, Carter.
Bye.
Bye, Carter.
One of the big things that I was hoping to like kind of peel back the layers of the onion on was like, what's it like? I mean, so like you got all this access with like media days and things like that. So you've got the passes. I saw you take the pictures of the passes and stuff. Like, what does that feel like to just have that kind of access?
It's fun. I'm not gonna lie. Like I'm not ever. I hope in my career I never get to the point where I act like it's just no big deal. I'm a fan. I went into radio. Okay, like I don't hold myself to the same standards as the capital J journalists that refuse to support any team. I'm in radio for a reason. I kind of failed as a beat writer when I was trying to do that in school, take the unbiased approach, and just I didn't find any fun in that at all. So I do get excited. I where is it? Like right here. When I get my little media days badge, that's fun. You know, it's cool to have that thing around your neck and be able to walk around. But it you do get used to it. I think my first SEC media days was 2013, and I would just like kind of wide-eyed kind of like that's Joe Tessitore, just little names like that, like that's Barrett Slee, and now I know Barrett really well. I'm like good buddies with Barrett, but just little things like that. Then the players and the coaches come in, and you do kind of get a little bit starstruck or whatnot. But that definitely wears off in time. It's to the point now where when Kirby comes in or Mark Richt comes in, and you're talking to players one-on-one, it's very much work. It is a job. It's a job that a lot of people would love a chance to do, no doubt, and I appreciate that every single time I get to do it. But the work aspect does kind of take over big time over the years. But it is cool. Yeah. I mean, I going behind the ropes never gets old. We have access in a normal year when COVID's not a thing. Like during a football game, I'm in the press box nowadays. Used to be on the field taking photos every game, but we have access to the field about an hour and a half before the game, and I can go walk around the sidelines and kind of take observations and literally have some pretty darn cool access. And that there's not many people. I know a lot of people have, but the majority of Georgia fans you talk to have never touched Sanford Stadium Field. Never. Like they've never put foot on grass, and that's something that never ever gets old getting to do that stuff, man. But it is cool.
As we reviewed last year. As we reviewed last year, some of us have been on the field celebrating.
Wow, we were both there, but only one of us, not me, tore down the goalpost. So that was John.
The 2000 Tennessee game was what you're talking about, I assume, man. Yeah, that's a good one. If someone wants to write a big, deep memoir about that, I would read every word of it, man. All your experience.
You'll have to go. You'll have to go back into the My God, a Podcast archives because we did one last year. So that's when we talked to Jeff Dantzler. And nice. And we talked to Chase Kelly from 7-6, and we talked to George Foster, awesome. Which George was hilarious. So
yeah, he's awesome. He's great.
George couldn't believe that John didn't keep a souvenir of the of the goalpost.
You can get big bucks for that these days, man. I did a social media post a couple years ago for 960 The Ref. It was basically like an overhead shot of Sanford Stadium that night, and I said, "Are you in this picture? Tell me your story about it." And I had someone reveal to us that I forget what frat house it is, but there is still a good chunk of that goalpost in one of the frat houses on Millage right now, like today. And he actually sent me a picture of it. They wrote the score on it, whatnot. And it sits up on the mantle with a bunch of other just stuff they've collected over the years. So it still exists in Athens.
That's awesome. If it was the where we left it in the front yard, it was probably Phi Delta Theta. Because that's where I dropped it.
That's awesome.
When you were talking about that first media days, was that when you were doing like Bulldog Illustrated, or was that after you had moved to radio?
Yeah, that was Bulldog Illustrated. I went down with Murray Poole. I don't know if you're familiar with Murray that wrote for Bulldog Illustrated for a long time, and I think he was part of the Brunswick News, but he and I went down there and spent all 4 days. Like this year, where's the thing again? I'll actually show. This is a real oddity of these badges. See where it says Tuesday? They've never done daily passes until this year. So I was only accessed for Georgia, not just Georgia, but the Tuesday day of all the 4 coaches that were there. And I've in the past have gone all 3 and 4 days because that's some of the greatest material you can get there. Is asking other coaches, other players about their expectations against Georgia or favorite stadiums or things like that. They'll drop some stuff about Georgia in there. So I really hated not being able to do that with all the coaches and players from other schools this year. So I was only able to kind of sit there and watch our guys that morning. But I do miss the full week access. I hope we get back there pretty soon.
Who were the coaches that were on on our day? I can't remember. It was Kirby and
it
who
was
else?
Josh Heupel made his first appearance out there. Mark Stoops at Kentucky, then Lane Kiffin was out there. So that was the four. Lane's
What
always a
were
good team.
your impressions of Heupel?
I don't know. I don't have many expectations or impressions of him. He seems like just another Band-Aid for a program that is just in disarray. I know I probably sound like Chance Kelly right now. Tennessee is just where we've always dreamt of Tennessee being right now. Anybody that lived through the 90s, like all three of us, those were bad times. Those were not good times at all with having Tennessee on top of the mountain. But I just don't see if he's going to do anything there. Some coaches will inherit good stuff, others will not. He's inherited an absolute fire on Rocky Top, and it's just it's year zero for him. It's start from scratch and try to go beat South Carolina, Vanderbilt, and I don't know, maybe who else can run with? Not Kentucky. I think Kentucky, Missouri will beat them both handedly. I think go beat South Carolina and Vanderbilt, and then get into next season and show improvements, but. I don't know. I mean, like Heupel was not great at UCF. I think UCF got an upgrade with Gus Malzahn. In a weird, I really do. I think Gus is a fine coach. I don't think he's cut out for the rigors of the SEC, but I think they're in better shape now. And I think in a perfect world, we'll get Tennessee and UCF in the Mobile Bowl. Let them play each other for two programs that kind of swap things around. Wouldn't that be awesome?
That would be so funny. That would be so funny. So you're saying that the orange emitting from Knoxville is a dumpster fire? Is that what I'm hearing?
They should have hired T. Martin. I don't know why T. Martin got away again when you've had multiple opportunities to promote him into a higher role, and maybe one day they will. But I fear, and I say that from a unbiased way. I'm loving it, but I fear that Tennessee is going to have another coach within 3 or 4 years. I just don't see Heupel having success there. So
I mean, I don't know as much about T's coaching career. I mean, I know offense, obviously, but I don't know. I mean, the former player, like I don't want them to hire him either because I don't want him to be anything like their Kirby Smart, right?
Right. Yeah. So we'll see.
So another question that I had, like a burning question, was. So one thing that you saw with Lane Kiffin, who was it, Jim? Who was it that asked the silly question from Saturday Down South?
That's all I knew was it was Saturday Down South. I don't know who it was.
He asked that question. Like, do you have like a repertoire of questions that you ask these guys, or like, do you have like questions that are like, man, I really want to ask this question, but I can't. But I really want to.
I'll say this. This year was not the year to ask side silly questions. It just wasn't a good time for that. And we, like we said earlier, it was not, there were no breakaway interviews. There was no small sessions. You only had a brief amount of time on a main podium with a lot of very serious journalists in there trying to ask questions. I got frustrated because you may have noticed Kirby Smart and JT Daniels both got asked a question about Demetrius Robertson. Okay, like they don't want to talk about Demetrius Robertson. He's an Auburn player now. Okay, let him go play for all. Let's talk about my team. And as professional as both of their answers were, they didn't want to talk about Demetrius Robertson. It just wasn't the year, in my opinion, to ask those kind of questions. Now, in previous years, in a side session, that question for Lane Kiffin would have been fun. Sometimes it's a good tactic to kind of loosen these guys up a little bit, ask something off cusp. I once, and I'm very proud of this, a few years ago, when Josh Dobbs was still there with Tennessee, I think AL.com wrote an article about like the worst questions asked at SEC Media Days on whatever day it was, and I got number one. I was very proud of this. It was a question for Josh the same day that Josh Dobbs was there. Remember, he was like an aerospace engineer major. He was some brilliant mind or whatever. And that very same day was the day that they flew some sort of aircraft, spacecraft by Pluto. And it was a big deal at the time, several years ago. And I asked Josh, I was like, hey, man, I know the spacecraft is going by Pluto. Do you feel bad for Pluto that it was demoted from a planet? Just kind of trying to butter him up a little bit, like loosen him up. He got a good, solid laugh out of it. But some dude from AL.com rated that as the worst question of the day. And I was like, come on, man. It's like, and it was all in fun, but it was you gotta kind of ask some silly questions from time to time. But I saw your tweet, John, and I agree with you. Like, this year was just not a great time to use the small amount of time we had with these guys to ask Lane Kiffin about his diet. And even he shrugged it off. Like, what kind of question is that? And like, he knew he was on limited time.
It's like, what a weird question.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I think
it was like a not very Lane Kiffin response almost, right?
Yeah.
Which I guess, to your point, it's kind of like read the room, I guess. I don't know.
And back in 2013, I think it was when Johnny Manziel had the big crazy day there, he was just he was getting peppered with questions about the Manning passing camp. I think the day before, 2 days before, he left unexpectedly, and that was a big deal. It was like, oh my gosh, this Heisman Trophy winner, he's becoming a hothead. He got kicked out of the Manning passing camp. And the mood around the table was very just like on edge. And you could tell Johnny was like getting really frustrated. So out of nowhere, I asked him a random golf question. I was like, Johnny, you're 265. I was like, you're 265 yards from the green, water in front of the hole. What club's coming out of the bag? And he looked at me like, the hell? But he thought it was awesome. He like really appreciated me changing the tone a little bit. And then once he answered that, I asked him some other generic football question. And I think I got a better response from him because I like let him show his person before he was just the football player. So in media days, there's a bit of a tactic to kind of like not getting to know them. You're only there for a minute, but warm them up. Don't just pepper them with all these bad questions. Do stuff to have a little bit of fun with them. Think like Tonight Show. Like, go as a correspondent, go ask a fun question, then hit them with the serious stuff if there's time for that. So there are ways to do it, but this wasn't a good year for that. I'm with you, John.
I would really like to know what Kirby Smart's favorite sauce is.
Well, now in NIL, it's whoever's paying him, right? I mean, who knows? Whoever's sponsoring him at this point.
Yeah, who? I wonder who Kirby would have been sponsored by back in the day. That's we were there for 1 year with him, or I was there for 1 year with him.
Y'all are big into sauce Twitter. Isn't that one of y'all's things? Isn't it? Isn't that
that's one of the many Twitters? Yeah, it's one of the many Twitters. It's one of our Twitters. That's correct.
When I was out there this week, I went and ate at Dreamland Barbecue. You've been to Dreamland, right?
Yes,
I've been once.
Yeah. They've got good sauce. I've got a big old thing of sauce I bought and brought home from them. So I'm ready to put that on some ribs the next couple weekends, man.
Excellent. I love your smoker pictures.
You're not one that says that if you have to put sauce on it, it's not good. Because I also like sauce. I don't get that either.
You can have it both, obviously, but no, I love drowning it in sauce, man. There's almost an art to like eating the sauce first and then washing it down with the meat itself, man. It's just there's an art to eating a rib.
For sure.
There's ways to do it.
For sure.
But no, I love me some barbecue sauce.
I love it. Love it.
I'm about to go off the rails. Which Carolina do you like? For the Carolina sauces, do you prefer the South Carolina mustard based or the North Carolina vinegar based?
B. I hate mustard.
Same here.
Mustard sauce is nasty. Nasty.
That's the correct answer.
I have only recently learned that I like really love vinegar based sauce. I usually would go with some of the more generic Georgia stuff, but no, the Carolina vinegar is where it's at, man. I love that stuff. I think Fresh Air there in Athens has a really good sauce. They got a nice vinegar-based sauce.
Heirloom, I think Heirloom Market in Atlanta has got one too.
Heirloom is good.
It's been a long time since I've been there. But.
What's funny, my dog, just like anybody else's dog, will beg for food at the plate. I'll if I give him like a piece of barbecue with vinegar sauce, he'll spit it out. He can't stand it. There's something about the vinegar that interacts with the dog that they hate it, man. He is not about that vinegar sauce.
All right, since we've gone into sauce Twitter, I had this popped into my head a few minutes ago, Logan, and so I've got to bring it up. The way from my memory, the way that I remember like coming to know of you was actually when you were like writing the Bachelor recaps or Bachelorette recaps on Bulldog Illustrated. Because like it's someone like because I think it was. I'm not sure if I'm going to get this right. Was it the Josh Murray season too? I think, or am I making that up?
That's why we did it.
Okay. So that's when I first remember like knowing of you when you were writing for Bulldog Illustrated, and that came up because somebody retweeted it, and I was like, "Oh, this guy's hilarious."
So that was 2014, if I remember this right. 2014. We had gotten word because just people we knew around town kind of tipped us off to say like, hey, not only is Josh Murray on it, but he wins it. Like we knew weeks ahead that he was going to win the Bachelorette. So because we knew it was going to go that far, we just had this idea. It's like, watch the episode, do a little blog about it, whatnot. And it's funny you say that because Vance Levy, the owner, I guess, of Bulldog Illustrated, it got a ton of hits. A ton of people opened that thing up. He was like, guess what you're doing next week? You're watching The Bachelor again. We're going to keep it rolling. But here's the negative part, man. I'm still to this day stuck in Bachelor hell because when you watch an episode, usually or a season, the next Bachelor or Bachelorette is usually somebody from the previous season. And it's a never-ending cycle that my wife and I are now stuck in. So here we are 7 years later, still watching The Bachelor and Bachelorette when it's on, mainly for the train wreck value, but because it just continues on from the previous season. So that it got me in a vortex I can't get out of, man.
I was about to say, I think that you guys are still doing that with the entertainments.
That's
entertainments.
Right. I cannot convince Walker to watch a Bachelorette show, but I still to this day, it's a guilty pleasure, man. Very guilty.
Sidebar about The Bachelor.
No, later that season, I can't remember the girl's name. Was it who did Josh Murray end up with? I can't think of her name.
It was Andy.
Andy, yeah. So they were on the sidelines for a football game shortly after the season was over, and I got Josh to take a picture with me and Andy. So I handed Josh my phone. I was like, I'm going to stand here with your lady, and you're going to take a picture of it. And I still have that picture on Facebook or somewhere. So it was that was nice. And I think I cannot confirm this, but I think the jealousy he had for me and Andy was the reason they didn't last very long.
Obviously, that's the only logical explanation.
Yeah, I don't think Mrs. Booker agrees with that, but I think that's part of why they broke up. Just saying.
Logan, do you since you're an avid watcher, I can't remember what season it was, but there was a guy that I used to pal around with a few years ago, James McCoy.
Okay, vaguely
he was like one of the last 5 or 6 guys or something like that.
Okay,
but I saw all of his exploits on Instagram and everything like that afterwards. It was like, I can't believe you ended up being
I vaguely
one of those
recognize
guys.
It looks like.
He was the guy that came in playing a guitar when he first came in. He played a guitar with her.
Hey, you got to do what you got to do, right?
Yeah.
Got to stand up.
Sorry to derail us into that, but I had to.
You never know. You never know what you're going to get.
I've always said the best conversations on air. It's not always sports related, man. It's when things get relaxed. Those are the best.
So what else do we need to know, or haven't we asked about your experience this week with media days, with the everything coming up? Obviously, Jim and I we're going to end up doing a season preview show. What should we be asking?
I wish there was more from this week. I keep rehashing it that it was just a watered down version of what normally is. I think the good news we got from Kirby and that, that's one thing we didn't even touch on earlier, is that one thing that every school does at media days. I think every school does this, but Claude Felton, Georgia's SID, has done this for many, many years, is that prior to Kirby Smart and the players going out into the main rooms and doing all their roundabouts with all the media, they will get one of the bigger suites in the hotel and actually have just the Georgia media that covers the beat here in Athens go up into the hotel suite and actually get the players for about 15 or 20 minutes before they get onslaughted by the hundreds and in some cases thousands of media there. And that way we can get a lot of our stuff before everybody else gets it. And so that's a nice little, private access pretty much up in a suite to talk to coach and the players. But this year it was so limited based on COVID protocols that very, very few. I actually didn't even make the cut to get up there to hang out with them. There were some other pretty prominent beat writers that were not allowed to go up in that room this year as well. So I was disappointed in that. Not that I feel like I'm entitled to be there. I get the whole thing. But because I was not, there was certainly a lot of stuff that I wanted to get in and ask and talk to that I wasn't able to do with those guys up there. But I like that they do that to give you access. But when he did that this year, I know that he dropped the Eric Gilbert eligibility thing. I don't even know how much of an issue that has been. I've never heard anything definitive. I know there was the question mark when he came in from LSU, rumor is he wasn't a very good student to wrap up LSU, but Kirby seems to say and think that he's doing just fine. He'll be ready to go. I liked what we were hearing from Dominic Blaylock. And I don't think Kearis Jackson was ever a factor, but I have this sneaky suspicion that Dominic will be ready to go, if not right away, then pretty early in the season. So we got some injury news from Kirby that day that I'm not sure how pressing any of it is. And here's, I don't know how you guys feel. I've kind of preached this to my audiences that I am not going to spend the next several months using a lot of energy with optimism about George Pickens coming back. I just don't see it. I would love to be wrong. I would love to see him out there. I know Kirby's like, oh, he's doing great. He's coming along really good. He's running in a straight line. And what a lot of people heard was, oh my God, we're getting George Pickens back. It's like, no, pump the brakes here. I would be shocked if he plays late in the season. And man, would I love to see him play. But I'm trying to just reserve my energy for the players I know we're going to play, not George. But my God, it would be awesome to get him back. I just don't see it. I think he's in a position where he can sit out the year, go to an NFL combine, and still be a first-round pick. And he's probably going to get some NIL along the way, too. I think a brand would love to attach their name to George right now, even while he's not playing. So I think he'll be just fine. I don't think we're going to see him. And that's my opinion, and I would love to be wrong about it, but I just don't think we're going to see George.
Yeah, I mean, the only way it happens, is if we make the playoff and he comes back for the playoff. I don't see anything outside of that.
Wouldn't that be
even
awesome?
If we do make the playoff, I mean, how incredible would that be, right?
Yeah.
but I don't know. I don't know. I mean, that's really fast. I mean, that's a short period of time, and not to say other people haven't done it before, but I don't know. I remember similar things being said about Sean Bailey that time when he tore his in the SEC championship one year in in 05, right? And then 06, it was like, oh yeah, he's going to play. And, he didn't. I don't know. We've seen, I know advancements in surgery since then, but still, it's definitely an off-season type talking point, right?
I think Adrian Peterson, the NFL back, he ruined it for everybody. When he came back 6 months later, everybody's like, "Oh, it can be done in 6 months." Like, that's a very freak incident. So I don't know, but we'll see. But I hope we see him. I just don't think we will. But other than that, I think we're a pretty healthy team. I mean, other than Dominic Blaylock's trying to make his comeback, and you'll get your dinged up players in preseason as preseason camp starts up. Basically, and here's a rule of thumb I think about a lot. Now that Media Days is over, behind us, Georgia's done, I do not want to see a Georgia headline until September 4th. Anything like in the news that's breaking news, 99% of the time is going to be bad news. So I just want it to be a quiet lull between now and whatever. I want to see pictures from practice. I want quotes from Kirby about who's looking, however they're looking out there. But any breaking news between now and kickoff is not going to be good news. So you just want to wake up every morning hoping not to see an alert on your phone that you weren't wanting. So that's where we are now.
Yeah, just give me a nice healthy diet of hype videos and things like that.
Exactly.
I definitely feel like we've reached the point where we need football to fill the void that keeps getting filled by other stuff.
Yeah.
we were texting about that today.
I was just going to say, I know that Logan is a big has become somewhat of a big soccer fan.
That's right.
But having the European Championships to fill the gap here, and then you had the NBA playoffs, and so now we're scraping the bottom of the barrel. I'm like, when does the Olympics start?
If they get going, I'm worried about the Olympics, man. I feel like we're going to have to cut that thing short too at some point. But it's been great. But now you are in the lull where. But like you just said, Jim, we need football now. We need it. There becomes a point where it's a fever pitch, and when the bowl games are over with, whether you're in the playoff or just the Peach Bowl, whatever, I'm fine without football for a while. I don't need some spring football to entertain me. I love football because I have to miss it. And when I really start to miss it around 4th of July is when it really kicks in that I am burning up for some football. It becomes that's why we love it so much. These countdowns are real. And right now, every single day that goes by is just another day, another hour closer. So I cannot wait till I think for me I'm not even a big week 0 guy. I will watch games on week 0 because it's college football, but I don't get hyped up for it. But that Thursday night going into Labor Day weekend, to me, that's one of the best nights of the year. And there's some decent games on this year. I
Yeah.
can't think of who off the top of my head, but that's the night where the wife and I will get a big old Chick-fil-A nugget tray, and we'll just sit there and watch football for 5 or 6 hours before we go to bed, man. It's a good night. And she's as rabid of a sports fan as we are, so man, it's good to have that.
That sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I know we've got 3 games. I'm outside of Charlotte, and then we've got 3 games in Charlotte that weekend.
Yeah.
I mean, there's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, all weekend long.
You going to all 3?
So. We were just talking about that the other night. I've talked about it with some of my buddies. I know I've got friends that'll be at both of the other 2 games because I've got a neighbor that went to App State. They're playing at Bank of America as well. And then I've got a lot of my friends are actually Charlotte. Well, they say Charlotte now. We used to know them as UNC Charlotte, but yeah, they're actually hosting Duke.
Nice.
So yeah, I know people that are going. I'm not sure I will, but yeah.
Right on.
Logan, where are you? Are you staying at the Westin where it's going to be like UGA Party Central?
I don't even have plans yet. I'm not sure what they have not divvied out the credentials yet, so we're actually hoping that it's still going to be a normal credential deal. So I don't know what it's going to look like yet. So we have not made our finalized plans yet, but we'll figure it out here pretty soon, I guess.
Excellent.
So we'll see.
What else? We hadn't talked about the expansion items. You alluded to it earlier. The Oklahoma and the Texas. That was pretty big. That was pretty big breaking news. Like I have to say, so John tweets, Jim and Hunter and I, we have like a kind of a text chain that we do offline. And John sent that tweet out, and we were all just like, what? Wow.
Well, I think there's no coincidence. It was the Houston Chronicle that dropped it. I think they're the first ones that reported that they've heard that they reached out. There's no coincidence that Texas A&M is on the stage at SEC Media Days today. I think whoever calculated that drop was pretty brilliant. And let's set Media Days on fire out in Hoover, Alabama. I love it, though. And as far as if it happens or not, I got to say I'm not against it. I mean, at this point where we have name, image, and likeness, we have a potential expanded playoff. The whole sport is changing so much right now that I don't know what kind of super conferences we can put together. I don't think we're going to have a Power 5 if this happens. I think it'll get reduced down to, say, 4. And I'm not sure what all the chaos is going to happen with the other conferences realigning. But let's just say all the SEC stays put, adds the 2, Oklahoma and Texas, gets to 16 teams. Do you hate it? I'm not sure I do. I think it's kind of intriguing. I think you realign the divisions. I think Auburn and Alabama would have to move. Yeah. So there'd be a lot of shakeup for sure. But I mean, if it's gonna happen now, and I'll say this: if I was the czar of college football and said yes or no, I'd probably say no right now. But if something beyond my control happens and we see this take place, I'm kind of going to buckle up and wait for the ride, man. I think it's going to be a crazy one. I think we're in for a crazy, crazy next decade of college football.
Yeah, my get off my lawn, old man complaint about it is just like I actually would rather contract than expand.
I'm with you.
I want to kick out. I would kick out Vanderbilt and Missouri personally, and like go back to 12 because 12 was perfect the way the rotation was set up. I mean, the fact that we still have yet to play at Texas A&M and they've been in the SEC since 2012 just is mind-boggling to me. And they've only come to our place once. So that's what worries me is like I mean, divisions might even go away. Like I've heard like the pod concept. I think you'd have to get creative and do something like that to be able to actually play the other teams in the SEC. Or you've got to add a conference game, but I'm not sure that Saban would allow that. I don't know because you got to ask him.
I think Saban would actually be for the conference game. He wants to play 12 conference games if it was up to him. But I think one thing to keep in mind if the playoff does go to 12. And it sounds like that's pretty inevitable. I think we're getting a 12-team playoff. I think that's going to happen in the next few years. I think if that happens, I think the fear of the 9th conference game kind of goes away a little bit because you have a lot more leeway for a loss. See, right now, an extra conference game, what Greg Sankey hears is 7 more losses. What he hears in his mind is, okay, that's going to be 7 more losses for my conference before going into a bowl game, going into a playoff contention. But with a 12-team playoff, I think there's so much more wiggle room for a loss on the schedule that maybe, and this is just wishful thinking, maybe the SEC will say, you know what, let's play a ninth game, get more SEC action, generate more revenue within our conference. And if you lose a game here and there, it's okay. You're still going to be considered one of the best 12 teams in the nation. So, again, that's a pipe dream, but I hope that's the way that would play out. And then we do get to go to Texas A&M before the next transcontinental eclipse.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's
exactly.
not a joke, by the way. You know, in spring of 2024, there is another transcontinental U.S. eclipse that's going to go over like Austin and whatnot. So we're going to get another one of those before we even get to go to Kyle Field. Isn't that crazy?
It's so ridiculous. It drives me crazy. Yeah, I don't know. Whatever. Get off my lawn.
So my conspiracy theorist, the conspiracy theorist in me is like, well, they're just laying the foundations for the what will eventually be like the super conference that sits above the group of five or whatever. It's like, well, basically all the teams that we all spend all the time talking about and thinking about and laboring over on ESPN and, you know, recruiting and all that kind of stuff. It's like, we're all just going to break away and just form our own little Champions League, basically, yeah. Logan.
Here's what we need. We need relegation, John. We need relegation. The bottom four teams, you're going to the Sun Belt next year, baby. The top four teams down there, you're coming up to the SEC, man. But
you've got action.
Wouldn't that be awesome? But the thing with that, and the problem is, we have fun talking about it. You cannot recruit if you're not in the top tier of the league. So they would never do that for that reason alone. But how fun does that sound? Like, Tennessee, you sucked this year. You're going to play a Sun Belt schedule next year. That sounds amazing.
Just win, baby.
I'm telling you,
just win,
man.
baby.
You can get back. Just get better. I mean, then you got a Sunderland situation where you got Tennessee like playing in Division II championship games. Like that'd be crazy, wouldn't it?
Man. I love it. I would love to see Tennessee playing in.
No doubt.
It's all fun and games until it's your team that's potentially on the bubble.
Exactly. Or when those upsets happen, like 2019 South Carolina, man. It's all fun until it's you. Man.
Yeah.
Right. For sure.
So name, image, likeness. I know that had to have been a hot topic that was at media days as well. You heard the bombshell about Emory Jones, or sorry, not Emory Jones, Bryce Young.
Was it? Yeah.
The $1 million contract, which is just mind boggling to me for a kid that's only thrown like 20 something passes or something like that.
Well, when you're the Alabama quarterback, that's what they're paying for. It's not for Bryce Young. It's to have the Alabama starting quarterback promote your brand, and that's a valuable entity, obviously, and that will go into recruiting. But here's the thing: I think outside of the superstars in the league, and I'm not even sure who those are right now. Obviously, Bryce Young has established himself as an NIL superstar. I think Spencer Rattler might be one of those names. I think Sam Howell, JT Daniels have the potential as well. But outside of them, and think backwards, think the Trevor Lawrences and Justin Fields could have made a fortune while in college, obviously. But I don't see many superstars now. And I think the ones that are not superstars are going to be surprised real quick how not marketable they are that they think they are. Okay, like I mean, we're just having a real conversation here. It's not a knock on anybody, but I know Zamir White's going to be pushing some merchandise. I don't know how many brands are going to line up to pay him six figures to put some Instagram post up on a page. I don't know, and there's a lot of players of that caliber, and not just Georgia, but elsewhere that think that they can just get millions of dollars thrown their way. They're going to find out pretty soon that it's only the upper 1% of the college football players that I think are worth, from an investment standpoint, from a return on investment, throwing that much money to essentially be a brand ambassador through their social media. They're not going to go punch a clock and put spreadsheets together in a company. They're just going to tweet out and put stuff on Instagram and get paid for it. That's going to be the main way of making money. But I just don't think, and we're talking football, there's obviously players in other sports, like the girl from Olivia Dunn, I think her name is, the LSU gymnast, who's worth a fortune in just her following. But I think it's going to be a rude wake-up call for a lot of people that they're not as valuable as they think they are. And so I'm not sure how much it's going to
Well,
change.
I think we actually, this is actually good coming off the conversation we had with Chase earlier this week with Iconic Brands, but which I think isn't Zamir was part of their group, right?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, that's where his shirts are. Yeah, he's through Iconic.
And look, and that is, to me, that is the perfect NIL for a guy like Zamir White. And because I think he can sell a ton of T-shirts. I will buy a Zamir White T-shirt just because I love the kid and I want to support him in some way, so he can make money and help himself and his family, obviously. And a lot of fans of programs will do that. I think in terms of the whales out there, though, the ones that the companies that are willing to attach a big 6-figure deal. I don't know how prominent that's going to be with a lot of players that think they're worth that and may realize they're not. But no, what Chance is doing, or what they're doing with Iconic Brands, I think is perfect. I applaud them for getting ahead of the game and realizing they can get some of those players like Kendall Milton and Zamir White on with them. And I think that is a marriage made in heaven. I think that's perfect for a college athlete. But I'm curious in the next few years to see who's actually driving a Maserati around campus because they have $10 million in the bank. I don't know how much that's going to be. Arch Manning will.
Yeah.
Okay, Arch Manning's going to make a killing when he gets to college. And I mean that. And he may not even need it because his uncles are so rich. But another thing to keep in mind, I've thought about this kind of a random thought. When you use Arch as an example, or use another kid that just Bryce Young, that falls into literally millions of dollars. He can buy a house if he wants to with cash. He can go buy the Maserati we just talked about. Is he going to go focus time on ancient Greek philosophy on his Friday morning schedule? Is he going to take that seriously and stay academically eligible? Hell no. Okay, you're going to see kids get into a trap of living like a rock star. And oh, by the way, I forgot I had this whole thing called school going on, and I have to crunch numbers in econ class. They're not going to do that. So I think we're going to see a lot of players that have NILs all of a sudden find themselves academically ineligible, and that's going to be bad for them. So I don't know.
I have a feeling that the dark man himself will definitely have that top of mind as he sits down and has the player meetings with Bryce.
Yeah.
I imagine as soon as he caught wind that Bryce Young was signing that deal, I bet that they were like, listen, you got to come to school. All right.
Well, I also question how big the deal really is, and because we're getting that figure from Saban, and how much of it is Saban throwing that number out there as a recruiting tool. Come to Alabama, you can get this. I don't know. I question. Yeah.
I think, and here's where the NIL, and just real quick on this, I think the dark side we're going to see, and it's inevitable. Back to Arch Manning, back to the next 5-star kid that has got 4 schools. They all want him bad. I mean, talk about the top 3-4 recruits in the nation. I think you're going to get into a lot of situations where the deep pocket boosters of the schools are going to start putting together packages to lure 5 stars to the school. Hey, young man, come to Georgia. I'll pay you $500,000 if you make an Instagram post every week. Make it easy on them. And that's where it's really going to get something that we're not used to, is seeing the Bama boosters, the Georgia boosters, and the Clemson boosters all want the same kid who can offer them the most. And they're going to step on campus a multi-millionaire before they ever take a first snap. And how that's going to affect them mentally and as a football player, it's going to be an interesting watch to see how it plays out. But that's going to get weird here real soon. I think this coming cycle, you're going to see bidding wars for 5-star recruits, no doubt in my mind.
We talked about that, Jim. We talked about that. You can't pay them in high school, but you can certainly set them up to where, hey, come to the school here. Like, just like I was joking. Like, when they take their official visits, it's like, Nick Saban will be talking to them about the school, and then over here we have this car dealership guy, or he owns a dealership down the road. You see that car that Bryce Young is driving? It's right here.
That's yours the minute you step on campus, no doubt.
Wouldn't it be cool if you had one of those? Oh man, that'd be great.
Not that it's not already happened. I'm just saying, but yeah, I think we're going to get to that point where it's a bidding war, man.
Right.
I don't know if
I was thinking about some of the cars that I saw when I was at Georgia, but I'm not going to bring it up because I didn't see anything like that.
I don't know if the Walkers of Wrightsville paid for that Firebird or not. I have no idea. I'm not here to guess. I don't know. Okay, that's not,
Jimbo?
it's not my business.
Jimbo Fisher said something about that today, or
Really?
something. I felt like I saw. He said something along the lines of like, "Well, we're basically doing the same thing we've always been doing. It's just now everybody's talking about it."
Yeah,
Yeah, it's out in the open.
Pretty much. Crazy times, man.
Well, we got through what I had jotted down for SEC Media Days for sure, and then Logan, thanks for talking. I don't know, we got some good like season preview stuff from you as well.
Yeah, definitely,
which is awesome.
I'm happy to join anytime, you guys.
Yeah, that was awesome to get through that, and cool. we've been schooled on pronunciations. Always good.
I'm right there with you, Jim. Though, man, I wait for that Scott Howard pronunciation to come out because I'm. But everything I've been told, it's Eric Gilbert. Eric Gilbert.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
It. So
speaking of Scott Howard, are you like? Because you had some baseball announcing going on here recently, right?
Yeah, I do the PA for Foley Field, so I sit up there and just I don't do what Scott does. That's Dave and Jeff. They're the ones that call the games, but I just sit up there in the box and now batting, Riley King, and now bat or the between inning promotions and whatnot, which is fun. I get a nice seat in the stadium and get to kind of talk the whole day. It's fun, but I'm not announcing the games by like Scott does. It's not there, but it's still pretty fun.
Okay.
Now, from my memory, David did that at Georgia basketball, like when I was in school. I think.
Did he? He may have done basketball a while back. Okay.
Yeah, so I was there, like late '90s, early 2000s. I'm pretty sure it was David Johnson was doing that back then. Yeah. From what I recall.
When did you graduate, Logan?
That's how old I am. Like Lauren Smith was still on the sideline, so I'm old.
Yeah, so I'm a unique case, man. I'm 38 years old, but I just graduated from Georgia like 2015. I went to school as an old man, so I did not go to college right out of high school. I just kind of did a lot of side random stuff. I was just not cut out to be a college kid right away, and just a lot of things in life going on. But later in life, I started at just a little JUCO. In 2011, I think it was. And then I just got good grades and transferred over to the Grady School and finished out stuff there. So I spent 3 years at Georgia just as a 30-something year old. So I stood out. I was not your typical kid in class. I was an old man, but I had fun with it. It was still cool.
That's a different experience.
Awesome,
yeah, I know.
It was. And I know for a fact I got better grades as an adult than I would have at 18 years old. I promise you that. So I got the most out of my education, man. But so yeah, it was just a lot of life twists and turns when I was younger that eventually led me into school as an older person and wound up in Athens. So just kind of weird.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I did not realize that.
Yep. Yeah,
I didn't realize that either.
Yeah.
One of the first interactions that I had with you was I think Jim talked about where he first recognized who you were. I think that I saw one of our fraternity brothers, Paul Mathewson.
Oh,
he was interacting with you on Twitter, and I was like, this just like Jim. I was like, man, this guy sounds pretty funny. I like it, so I started following you.
Paul, I went to high school with Paul. You know that, right?
Well, I figured that you guys knew each other to a certain extent because of the way that you were interacting.
I've known Paul since like middle school. Like we go way back. So he's a good dude. He just got married recently, by the way. I'm sure you saw that.
Yes, he did.
But
I did.
He's a good dude. He's one of the good guys out there, man. I didn't realize you guys were connected.
Yeah. So awesome. Paul was a year younger than I was. Jim's a year older than I am. So we were all in the same fraternity. So
awesome. Yeah, I bet he was a good friend.
I was the old guy.
He was a fun kid. Yeah, he was definitely one of the fun ones.
I believe it.
That whole crew that he rolled around with.
Awesome. Logan, I want to make sure we cover everywhere that everyone can find you. So let me run down. Actually, I'm going off your Twitter bio to make sure I didn't forget anything. But we got Morning Show on 960 The Ref, which I will say, even if you're not in Athens, you can still check Logan out multiple ways to listen online or through apps on the phone. That's how I do it. Great show. I listen all the time. Second String podcast, which has also featured Carter Powell, as we talked about earlier.
Right.
And then, we just talked on the Fully Field announcing. Anything else you wanted to, anywhere else anyone can find you, or anything else you wanted to shout out?
That's about it. I think I'm active on Twitter. I have an Instagram, but I don't do a whole lot of sports stuff on there, as Jim John can probably tell you. But yeah, as far as
lots of lake pictures.
Yeah, it's a lot of my dogs swimming around the lake. If you want to follow me at Logan MB83 on the gram, but I'm not a big sports guy on the gram. But yeah, that's about it. Twitter at Logan M Booker, and the morning show, like you mentioned, 6 to 10 every single weekday morning. And I guess the best way, like you do, Jim, is through the app. Just download 960 The Ref app. It's free, and it's a pretty good app. Listen to us anywhere.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely. And 1,513 days since you've argued with a stranger online, which is awesome.
That is 100% accurate.
I know it is.
I wake up every morning and it's muscle memory. I kid you not. I do it without even thinking about it. Like you guys and everybody else, one of the first things we do is pull our phone out in the morning and find out what we missed overnight. And without even thinking about it, I change my bio. I say, did I argue with a stranger yesterday? I've said no for 1,500 days now. It's not healthy, man. Like, don't do it. There's nothing you're going to gain out of getting into bickering fights with strangers online. I'm telling you, it's the healthiest thing I've ever done. I've
got to say, when I saw you started doing that, honestly, it changed how I interacted on Twitter. Because I was like, and as someone who so I gotta say this too. When you were on, I think when I found out that you had done that, you had said it on. You were on with Scott Duvall, a Wait and Since last Saturday, and you guys talked about it. And I tweeted and said, "Oh my gosh, I think I might have been that guy." We argued about something, and I don't who knows what it even was. I'm sure it was something stupid. I'm sure it was something that didn't matter because I don't remember what it was. But I was like,
well, it did not linger in my mind, so that's good. I'm glad.
Well, and I remember because I brought it up then, just because this was years ago even. But I was like, oh no, I think I was that guy. I hope I wasn't that guy. And you responded, and you were like, don't worry, it wasn't you. I don't remember what it was either, or whatever. And I was like, okay, cool.
Nah,
but I remember seeing that and you know what? That makes sense. I don't even know these people. Why am I talking to these people?
I used to be much more combative, get in those little bickering wars, and a lot of people that's the way they use social media. I get it.
Yeah.
But I got to the point where, there's a lot of Florida trolls out there, Tennessee trolls, where you say something, they just have to hear their voice chimed in. They want to get that reaction out of you. And I have learned over the last several years that a blatant ignoring hurts them way worse than anything you could say back to them, because when they don't get the reaction from you, I promise you, they hate that. They can't stand it. And I'm not opposed to muting an account. If someone's coming after me big time, I'll hit the mute button, and that's just like throwing them into a black hole. They don't know they're muted. They could tweet at me 10 times an hour for the rest of their lives, and I'll never see it. And that to me is very satisfying. So it's just a healthy move in life, man. And the funny thing is, though, if you and the three of us, if we wanted to have a little bit of a bickering back and forth on Twitter, you're not strangers. I don't mind doing that. We can have a disagreement and have a little back and forth, but you can do it in a healthy way. I have no need to just go back and forth with people that I will never meet, never. It just makes no sense to me. So yeah, it's a healthy move.
Yeah, for sure. No, I totally agree. I know. Honestly, you putting that, I don't know. I guess I'm a disciple of that. It changed the way I interact with people on Twitter too. I followed along. I was like, man, that's a great idea.
That's
so thank you.
Yeah,
thank you, Logan.
Just ignore, and I promise they can't stand that. They hate that. So it's a win-win for everybody, man.
I just reply with GIFs.
That's a good tactic. That's a very good tactic.
Awesome. All right, Logan. Well, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for coming on and educating on all this stuff.
Yeah. Happy to do it whenever.
For sure.